welcome to Making Your Mark in Creative at SESAC. Very, very thrilled to be here today with our wonderful SESAC speakers. All of these amazing women work here with me at SESAC on the creative services team. I'm just going to walk around and give everybody names, and then hopefully you guys can spend a little bit of time telling everybody a little bit about you. We have Erin Collins, who's our VP of Film and TV and Emerging Media. Diane Akin-Scarfo, Director of Creative as well as International. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about that too. Celeste Zendejas, Associate VP of SESAC Latina. And Lydia Schultz Cahill, the Senior Director of Creative Services here in Nashville, Tennessee. So welcome, you guys. This is so exciting. I'm just going to start by saying that Women's History Month feels, always like a wonderful time to reflect and think about how it is to be a woman in music. I've been in the music business a long time myself, and feel very honored to be a part of this village. But also like to look back and look forward and start to think about how all these things will be shaped in the future and how all of what we do is meaningful for what happens, both with songwriters and women songwriters, as well as all of the things that could happen beyond. So really just want to say it's just an honor to get to be a part of this conversation with you guys. I really want to keep it casual for those who are in the audience out there today. Thank you so much for coming. I encourage you guys, there is a Q&A feature down below. So we'd love for you guys to just put in questions. And at the end, when we have time, we'll pull some of those out and get back to whatever your questions are at the end. And I think other than that, I'd love to just get started. If you guys could just walk around, let's start with Erin and give us a little intro about exactly what you do, how long you've been here, and how you found your way to SESAC.
Sure, thanks, Sam. I've been at SESAC, this will be my 10th year, which I can't believe. And it's by far my favorite job. I love it. I started out in the music industry in high school. I started playing professionally in high school as a musician and played in orchestras for quite a few years until I got divorced and became a single mom. And then I had to, get a real job. So I started out producing concerts. I produced music, library music, and music for television. I worked in print music. I've done score supervision, mostly for video games, and a lot of all kinds of things all around the business. And then 10 years ago, I was interviewing for a job. I had been working for myself as a producer and I was miserable. And I hate working for myself. And I wanted to find something that was more, being a single mom, it was important to me to have a steady paycheck. And I thought I'd look around a little bit, and this opportunity came up and I thought, well, SESAC, I've heard cool things about them. And I started interviewing for the job without really understanding what the job was. And I had great conversations with the people who came out to interview me. And finally, I'm like, I don't understand what I'm interviewing for. And they said, oh, it's working with composers. And I thought, oh, this is perfect for me. I work with composers all day, every day. And I love them. And it turned out to be a really good fit for me.
Fantastic. Okay, Diana, how about you?
Well, that was awesome, Erin. There's some things I didn't even know in there. Hi, I'm Diana Akin-Scarfo. I'm actually currently in the Nashville office, but I have toggled between the New York office and the Nashville office. I started working at SESAC in the Writer-Publisher Relations Department in 2006, thanks to Tim Fink for bringing me on board. I was working at a small publisher on Music Row in Nashville, and a position came open on his team, and he brought me in and taught me a lot about just performing rights. I knew about music. I knew about singing music. I sang, in choir and all of those things. Did some musical theater throughout my, youth. But I didn't know a lot about the rights side. So, but in 2006, I started working here at SESAC, so I'll be here 15 years this May. And in 2008, I actually transferred to our New York office in writer publisher relations. So I worked there for a while, and now I'm back in Nashville, but I anticipate going between the two markets. And, you know, for me and how I even got into, you know, the music industry, it was a little happenstance, but I like I said before, sorry, something's going on with my daughter. This is our reality now. Yay.
Yes.
Moms. So I like I said, I grew up singing. I was singing in choir, doing, you know, choir competition, but I was also, you know, playing soccer. So I had two loves in my life. One was music and singing, and one was soccer. And eventually I had to choose like a more serious path with one of them, and that became soccer, but I still kept music in my life. I, you know, would dabble in it from time to time for fun and in different ways, like through musical theater. And then I moved to Nashville in 2001, and obviously this is a music city. And I was working in sports and entertainment at the Vanderbilt athletic department. And then I kind of transitioned over to the music, back to the music side. It was calling me back. And that's how I got involved with SESAC eventually. So that's it for me.
Awesome. 15 years. It's pretty amazing.
15 years.
Celeste, tell us about your journey here.
Thank you. Thank you, Samantha. I actually am celebrating 20 years in music this year. I started at a record label. I was working for EMI Music. I began in January of 2001. I started as a receptionist. And actually our colleague, Nelson Gonzalez, was in charge of the production department back then. And he gave me the opportunity to transfer from being a receptionist to work with him in the production department. That was within a week from starting to work there. So he really gambled with me. And I worked with him for like a year. And then I had the opportunity to go into the marketing and A&R department, where I worked in the region with the regional Mexican artists that we had. I did that for 7 years. And in 2008, I had the opportunity to come to SESAC, and I took it. It was a completely different world. I knew nothing about performing rights. I thought SESAC was a publisher. But it has been an exciting 13 years. I've been here 13 years now, currently the head of the Latin department. I am responsible for nurturing and developing our songwriters and publishers. Some of our clients include Nicky Jam, Manuel Turizo, Rake, Cristian Nodal, among many others. I'm very excited to be here.
Awesome. All right, Lydia, what about you?
This is so fun.
I know, I'm hearing everyone's stories.
I know, and it's wild because we all work together on a very regular basis, but then getting to take this time and have these conversations is so cool. But I am Lydia Schultz Cahill. I have been with SESAC, I think it'll be 5 years this fall. I'm from Wisconsin, very rural town, and I remember the look on my dad's face when I said that I wanted to go to college. And it only occurred to me that I should go to college because all of my friends were going to college, and I realized that I would be like stuck behind in this little town, which I love. But I remember he goes, "Does your mom know?" And I was like, "No, like I just came up with this idea. I'm gonna try it." He's like, "Well, what are you gonna go to college for?" I was like, "Oh, I don't know yet." And I went to school in Wisconsin for 2.5 years, and I had a friend, his name's Taylor Davis, who was a songwriter here in Nashville, and he was going to this school called Belmont. He was like, "Lydia, you love to sing, like you love country music, you know, you could get a major in music business." And that was this aha moment, get out of jail free card. I could finally pick a major. I did no research as far as like what a private school education was going to cost me. I was just sold, I was going. And I remember my mom was like, just treat it like it's a semester abroad. And it was also the first time I'd ever been on an airplane. So like that is how like small town I like, yeah. But I had an internship actually at BMI of all places called the like a song plugger, like junior song plugger thing that they do. And you get to go around to all these publishers and hear all these uncut songs. And I just thought that that was so incredible, so fascinating. Like these were the songs that were going to go on to be Carrie Underwood hits, whoever hits. And the idea that you could get paid to play songs for people, again, I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. And I had an interview with a guy named Benny Brown, and it was the last interview before I got to, they decided if I was going to get to work with them. And I remember I had put that I had taken copyright law on my resume just because I figured like it's a publishing job. I didn't write the book on copyright law, but I know a thing or two thanks to college. And he read that and he was like, oh, you should work in our legal and financial department. So then I ended up getting to work in QuickBooks. And after about 2 years in QuickBooks, they were like, you should go to something else.
Don't do the creative thing yet.
Right. Which like I still hear the QuickBooks that like click in my head sometimes, and it just like makes me shudder. But I worked in publishing then for a little while, and I had a songwriter named Rob Hatch that I work with, who, if you are familiar with the Nashville Creative Department, we had a wonderful woman by the name of Shannon Hatch who ran the department for a good while. And Nashville being the way that Nashville is, I heard that they were looking to bring a new creative person onto their team. And it was just a great fit. And I've been there, like I said, almost 5 years now, and I love it.
It's awesome. Well, it's good to hear. And I should say for everybody else too, SESAC has a very, very deep bench of incredible women, executives all the way down. But our president, Kelly Turner, our head of finance, Susan King, our head of HR, Kathy. I mean, we have an incredible group of women. So it's nice to be able to just focus here, but we could continue talking to more people. We'll see how that goes. I'm interested kind of more in just sharing with us kind of what it means to do creative today, you know, at a PRO, but even more broadly, just kind of in the field of the creative work that you guys do for each of you. And if you could talk a little bit about what you feel is sort of, you know, how you navigate finding and looking at talent today, and kind of like, you know, what do you think is the most important skill that you lean on in this work that you do here? So I'm going to start with Diana, just for fun.
Just for fun.
Just for fun. Giggles.
Yeah. So for me, I think the skill, there's probably a couple, and that's just teaching is one of them. Just the educational, teaching them, okay, how to see what we do in a different way so they understand it. You know, because a lot of the songwriters that we deal with are self-administered, meaning they administer their own publishing. And even if they aren't, it's good for them to understand that part of it, because it can get really complicated. But if you understand the basics, then you can take care of your own business, and that's super important. And I think the other one is just making people laugh and relating to them. That's probably a skill, and just, you know, maybe making them feel good about who they are and their voice, you know, and what they're trying to say, and what they're trying to put out there, you know, because it's tough. You can get knocked down quite a bit. And trying to put that in perspective, I think for them is helpful, you know, and that they're not alone in that too, and they're still important. So
yeah, I can imagine. What about you, Celeste?
I think in the creative side, it's very important to have a strong relationship, not only with your songwriters, but also within the music industry itself. When a songwriter goes into the studio or is about to record a new song, they sometimes look for us as their performing rights organization to help connect them with other songwriters for collaborations, or also asks us to pitch songs to record labels or artists directly. And I think that that's important too, to have a very strong relationship within the music industry and also with publishers as well.
Mm-hmm. Erin?
Well, I think a big skill that we need to have is problem solving. And just a passion for being curious about, like, I wonder what's going on here, and trying to figure things out. I also think it helps that I love eccentric people, and like wackos in the music industry are pretty common, or people who are larger than life characters. And I love that. I love learning about things. At SESAC, there's something new going on every day. I learn something new about the music industry every day, even though I've been in it for years. Something else in our particular position in creative is that you can't have a fear of public speaking. They didn't mention that to me when I was hired, and luckily I have a lot of experience being on stage, so I was okay. But I'm like, wow, that's really, you could get into trouble without asking somebody if they're cool with that, because it does involve, like Diana said, a lot of educating, a lot of getting on stage and being on panels and explaining PROs to people. So I think being comfortable with that is very important. And as Celeste said, I enjoy being an advocate for the writers and for SESAC in general. I try not to be a pain to my coworkers. I try to be very responsive to not only my clients, but people internally too, because everybody internally, SESAC is working very, very hard. And there's a lot of really talented people in finance and licensing, and our royalty department is fierce. And I think being responsive to your coworkers is as important as being responsive to our clients.
And Lydia, what about you? It's the magic.
Yes to all of those things. And then I think especially the last year that we've all experienced, being able to pivot and adapt to the situation that you find yourself in. This year has been very humbling, and we have found just how many things are not within our control, and realizing what you can control, what you cannot control, and focusing on improving on those things is big.
Yeah, I hear that. It's definitely a year of like just learning how to pivot and take care of other people and thinking about all the things. And of course, art, the creative, just songwriters and performers in general. It's just been such an incredibly challenging time. I'm interested in talking a little bit about the statistics. I'm going to get back into your careers a little bit as we navigate through, but here's a statistic to discuss a little bit. In 2019, I read that 14.4% of popular songs were written by female artists, marking an increase from 2018, which was 11.6%. So that's a pretty significant jump from one year to the next, but we're still talking about less than 15% of all popular songs. What does this say in your mind about our business, and how do you respond to this when you sort of think about your experience at SESAC or just in creative as well? When you look out at yourselves and your market, how does that sit with you? Anyone feel free to jump in. Any thoughts?
Well, the positive is that it's increasing.
Mm-hmm.
You always want it to be more than that, and you want females to be, and women to be represented in every aspect of the industry. I was on the Women in Music board from 2013 to 2017, and I was on a panel at South by Southwest in 2016, and I'd put a deck together. And I remember there were a couple graphics that I had from an article in Pitchfork, and it was basically all of these festivals and different music festivals, different things like that were happening from the past year, and they showed, you know, every single band and artist, you know, listed on it, and then the next slide showed every single band and artist that actually had a female musician in the band, and there were probably like 3 bands left out of a full bill, like teeny lines, you know, going all the way down. And it was really eye-opening. And it wasn't that it didn't make me less hopeful. It actually made me hopeful for, hey, let's get this message out here. Let's get this out to, you know, as many people as we can, as many young women as we can, so that people can actually see this. When you visualize it that way and it's in front of your face, I think people then start to take it more seriously. And I think since then, you know, and in general, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, this is something we need to really, really work on. And over time, like you said, and like you just pointed out, it has started to, you know, incrementally correct itself in some way. But I'm happy for someone else to weigh in on this.
Sure.
I know this doesn't, I mean, I was just, you know, really
difficult. Yeah, I mean, it's just something to reflect on if it feels, yeah, the growth is happening, but
and the word of it getting out and people being more aware of it, I think is what has been helpful, and opportunities, and, you know, women kind of like stepping up and being like, oh, yeah, I should put myself into that role. I should, you know, probably take that step and move into that space. You know, I think that's important too, not discounting yourself before you're even in the mix, being like, hey, you know, I'm gonna put myself in there. It's scary, you know, but you got to do it. You know, got to take that step.
yeah, we're going to be talking with a lot of other women songwriters for the next 4 Wednesdays. We're going to be hosting further conversations, which I'll share more details with you guys at the end. So we will have some of our women songwriters talking with you guys about their experience, of course.
Can I jump in for a
yeah.
second here? Because in the composing world, we'd be thrilled to have 15%. It's appalling. The world of composers in the last probably 3 years, the top 250 top grossing box office films were scored by less than 2% of women. It's closer to 1%. And last year that number went down. So we're really struggling to get women's voices heard in the composing industry. There's a wonderful organization I'd like to plug, and that's the Alliance for Women Film Composers. And they have a database of over 500 women composers. And that database is accessible to anybody, and you can go and find women and listen to their music, and hopefully things like that will help increase the number of women allowed to compose films. It's been a real struggle.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know we'll talk more too about it, but you know, I know you've been working hard with Christoph Beck on our effort at SESAC Scores, which for those of you who don't know, you can visit our website and learn more about it, but it's a nonprofit organization to help support diversity in composing, film and TV composing. And we've been working really hard to educate and connect and help, you know, make those resources more available, because of course we are motivated to make that change happen and work with our with our partners on that. So I encourage you all to look into that, and to your point, kind of, share what we can do to continue to explore and let women think that, there are opportunities, because there will be more and more. Did anyone have anything else they wanted to share on that before?
Yeah, I also like to weigh in on that. I'm very optimistic that there will be an increase. Like, I love to see artists like Rosalia and Billie Eilish collaborate on their new song. I love to see Karol G and Nicki Minaj reaching #1 with Tusa. And I'm very, very hopeful that songwriters and artists that have so much potential, like up and comers like Angela Aguilar and Paloma Mami, will break out within the next year or so. Hopefully they have that opportunity.
Yeah, there has been so much exciting stuff happening in that genre, especially, I mean, everywhere. But it's like, it feels incongruous to me, because when I read that statistics and I think about what I hear and what I see, it doesn't feel like that. It feels, because artist performers, it's a different number. It's in the songwriting piece that I think sometimes those things feel a little bit more askew. But I agree. I think, I think equality is possible. I think there will be more balance. I think all of the changes that have been happening will, put more women into positions, and young women into positions of creative power, where they feel that they can be successful. And seeing all these role models, I know, is such an important part of, to your point, kind of stepping into their own and seeing like, well, I can be a successful producer. I can be a successful songwriter. I can be a successful creative executive in this space.
Yeah, if you see it, right?
Yeah.
You see it in your life when you're growing up, it's normal.
Yeah.
And it's making those things normal. Like, oh, there's a female producer. There's a, female executive. There's a female artist, musicians, things like that. That's the part, making those things seem like it's just a part of what is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I work mainly in the country music space, and the first #1 party that I ever got to lead was for a female songwriter. And it was this surreal, wonderful moment of, what are the chances that the very first one that I get to do is a female? And you look at the odds, especially in country music, like the chances were very slim. And it was her first #1, and it was just such a special day. Her name's Allison Belts Cruz, and she's going to be on one of the panels that we're doing later this month. But I was looking at the Billboard chart on Monday, and I just, for fun, was like, oh, I'm just going to count how many women artists are on here. Like, look at the top 10, top 20. And I was like, all right, I'll look top 40. And I zoomed all the way out to top 60. And I think there were 11, which that's not a lot, but it's better. And I think this issue is so in the forefront of everyone's minds. Like, it just hurts your feelings, especially as a woman, when someone says like, oh, we can't sign too many women. Like, their sound is just like so-and-so sound. And then you look at their male roster with several country acts that, if I close my eyes, I'm not sure who is who. Yeah. But people are aware of it. And I think, like the saying, when you know better, you do better. And people are really actively working on doing better. And Allison and Alex Klein, they are both on a song with Tennille Arts right now. And that's written by all females, produced by a female, and as a female, brand new baby act. So it's like, also celebrate when it's good.
Yeah, it's exciting. So on that sort of path, when I look at you guys in your careers, when you look back, I guess, do you feel that there were any, women mentors or colleagues? It doesn't really even have to be professional per se. It could be just somebody in your life. But when you sort of look out, was there anybody that really encouraged you or helped pave the way for you as you look at this path? And if so, do you want to share some of that with us? Erin, it looks like you were about to say something.
Oh, I was going to say, I feel sad that I didn't have any mentors who, especially women. I modeled my SESAC career after two of my coworkers, though, so that helps. just looking at people who had been here for a long time and seeing how they handled their clients. It wasn't just women, it was men too, but two in particular who were very good at their jobs. And I just watched, I watched what they did.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah. I'd say my mom, she has nothing to do with music, but she gave me a love of music and she said, go do you, you know. That was the first one. But I also had men in my life, like, who gave me a chance. And then, like Tim Fink bringing me to SESAC, and Shannon showing me the ropes. She was, she wasn't Hatch back then, but then she became Hatch. And Linda Lawrence Critelli in New York. She was a president of Women in Music. And I worked, underneath her in New York, and she gave me many opportunities to, be seen and heard. Just coworkers I worked with too. But also people like affiliates I've worked with, like Kieran Gandhi. I met her on that South by Southwest Women in Music panel, and she's just been an amazing voice for women in the industry and producers and things like that. But it's not just one. It's been many over time of varying ages too, some of which have been younger than me. So
Yeah, absolutely. We can all be taught by anyone of any. I school every day by my team for sure.
Well, it's such an interesting idea. I think you always think of a mentor as someone that is older than you, and I have more wonderful mentors than I feel like I ever deserved who are older than me. But I also look around, and it's so much of my knowledge comes from my peers. Like, I have a truly wonderful group of women that I talk to on a very daily basis. And just having that space to bounce ideas with other females has been really helpful to me as well.
I agree. I can't name one in particular. I've had male and female mentors, and I continue to have colleagues, friends, songwriters, publishers within the industry that I admire, respect, and including yourselves, everyone in this panel. I speak on a daily basis, and
oh, thanks, Celeste. There's some people who don't even know they were my mentor.
Right.
They're just doing their thing, and I'm like, you've inspired me. They're just doing their business, and I'm like, oh, you're great. So
yeah, on the flip side, I sometimes wonder too, like, I know for all of you at certain points in your career early on, like you did an internship program, you were saying, I do feel like, there are so many organizations that can be helpful. Do you feel like in your career that you volunteer, you're on a board, you're sort of doing internships? Did those organizations help direct you? Were there opportunities, do you feel like, to participate without it necessarily being a job, but kind of more in an internship or a volunteer capacity or a board capacity or organization that was helpful at any point for you guys?
AIMP here in Nashville is really wonderful about community gatherings, and that's male, female. But I think Nashville is it's such an intimate setting in a way. Like, when you say like any gatherings, in my brain, I immediately went to the Key West Songwriters Festival. It's like, that's not a fancy formal anything, but the camaraderie and bonding over doing silly stuff with your friends, just definitely.
Yeah, it feels open, right? In that regard.
Yeah.
There's opportunity to walk in the door and say, I'd like to be helpful, or I want to volunteer, or I always think that's important. I imagine there are places where it's not as easy, but I would hope that for women who want to get involved in creative, there's opportunities for them without necessarily having to, get that job or whatever, especially now. Feel free to put in chat, anybody who's out there, if there's anything you want to share with people that you do feel like there's places for people to get involved or connect, please share with everybody who's here, just so we can learn a little bit more about that too. I'm kind of just, as you look at doing, creative at a PRO or even at a publisher, what do you feel like is most critical for you guys in terms of like your ability to kind of stay in this and be successful? What do you feel like is sort of the key ingredient? I mean, we've talked a little bit about the skills in creative that you feel like you lean on most, but when you really break it down and you're sort of sitting in front of somebody really being like, is this a good idea for me? Like when you're like, this is what I really feel like has been meaningful, critical to my success, in addition to some of the skills, is there something that you really think like, these are kind of like the things I would say to somebody who's, like that you'd be mentoring,
I would like to start there. I think it's very, very important to love what you do. This is not a 9-to-5 job. It's a 24/7. Sometimes you have to answer your phone at midnight or be in the studio late at night. You have to travel. You have to work on the weekends. You go to award shows wearing high heels for 8 hours. If you don't love what you do, if you don't have passion for the music, you'll be very, you have to love what you do. I think that's key.
Absolutely.
Agreed. No one's going to work harder for you than yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That too. I mean, it's all relationship based. So if you don't have that muscle to network and build relationships, you got to work that muscle out and really strengthen it. But no one's going to work harder for you than you.
I agree. Networking is really important. And as you said, you have to advocate for yourself. You can't be a wallflower. It's, especially in the composing world, it's really, it's tricky because it is so male dominated. And I hate to say you have to model yourself after men, but if you come in and you're not sure of yourself, if you're not confident in your own work, it's going to be tough to get a director to hire you. You have to walk in like, I got this, your project's in good hands with me. And I think that's something that a lot of women have to, some women are naturally good at it, but there's a lot of women who are very talented who kind of are hesitant to promote themselves when it comes down to being in front of a director.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We were in college, there was this like homecoming parade, and there was this truck of firefighters. And one of my friends was on the dance team and she was late, and the dance team was supposed to be on the fire truck, and she's running after the fire truck. And this firefighter like reaches out his arm and he's like, "You gotta want it." And that has like stuck with me since I heard it. And it's interesting how much it applies in the entertainment industry. Like, you've got to want it, because if you don't, there's so many people in line behind you who will happily take this job, this gig. They'll work longer hours for less money. It's intimidating, but if you can get past the intimidating factor, like Celeste said, if you love it, like, it's going to be great.
You gotta want it.
You gotta catch that fire truck.
I think it's important, and something that women have a tendency to excel at, and that is being someone who's great to work with. They're having a lot of give and take, and especially I noticed in the songwriting world, I have less experience with that in the songwriting world, but what I've noticed is the women who are super successful have a teamwork attitude. They're not married to everything they write. They're more flexible. In composing, they have an ability to take direction really well and not be offended if somebody wants to go in a different direction.
Yeah, definitely sounds like passion, persistence. I'm like, me and my alliteration. I'm gonna get to the next one. I'm not sure.
People are important.
skills,
People person.
prioritizing it when you have to at midnight. But yeah, I think just knowing that it's really in your soul, and really connecting to the work, and I think, songwriters, I mean, let's talk about that next. I mean, here's this incredible craft that all of us feel so honored. I mean, I was in the music business as well. I never had the sort of the opportunity to work on the compositions on the writer side. I was always on the label side, the recorded music side. So coming to Nashville and getting to be a part of this, I mean, it's truly like, it's an honor. This community of people who write songs and are writers, and I talk about that a lot. People who write, it's a particular kind of thoughtfulness. There's an intellect, there's a creativity, there's a cerebral sense. They are in the words. I mean, I'm truly touched by it all the time, just in the abstract. And I'm further away from it from you guys. But when I look at, when I think about Women's History Month, one of the thoughts I had, and I had shared this with you guys earlier, although it could be about any songwriter, really, it doesn't have to be about a woman. But when I thought about the songs that mattered to me with women, I started thinking about all sorts of different people. But I was curious, as you think about it, the songwriters that have influenced you in thinking about creative and songwriting and your work, is there anything you want to share, either a favorite songwriter or an experience maybe with an affiliate, or something that kind of feels like it connected you to this craft in a way that you just couldn't? I mean, Lydia shared sort of a story about like that idea of like, oh my God, I get to just like talk about songs. But like, was there something formative or an experience that you had, or a song or a moment that you could think of that kind of really connected you to this particular craft, this side of creative?
I have a special moment with one of our female songwriters that I'd like to share. It's about Erin Caende. She's one of our SESAC songwriters. She has been with SESAC for over 18 years, longer than I have. I have seen her struggle. I have seen her succeed. I have seen her work really hard. But there's a special moment in particular where she co-hosted an event with us. It was a Music 101 that took place in Mazatlan, Sinaloa, Mexico, in January of 2017. She presented her newest single that she had co-written at the time, and she actually performed it acoustically. The song's name was Despacito, performed by Luis Fonsi and Daddy Yankee. And it was a very special moment for all the attendings, including myself, because we heard the co-writer perform this song before it became a massive global successful song. That was a very special moment.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that gave me chills.
Yeah.
That's so fun. That's so fun.
It was special.
Get to hear them before they're before. Yeah. Anyone else think of anything that comes to mind? Lydia, you look like you're about to
said, well, and Allison Belts Cruz, that woman, I just love her. She was one of the first affiliates that I met with when I started working at SESAC in the fall of 2016. And I remember, I think the word you used, Erin, was wacko. They're like, she's not a wacko, but she isn't. It's just this different way of thinking that is unlike a lot of people that you would meet. But I remember meeting with her thinking like, oh, she was a little out there, interesting. And then a while later, I had a meeting with her, maybe like 6 months to a year later. And she came in and like, she just looked incredible. And I was like, what are you eating? What are you drinking? Like, whatever it is, bottle it, sell it. I'm your number one customer. I was like, there's just something different about you. Like, what is this? She was like, oh, I read the Bible. And I was like, maybe like you read like a chapter, a couple of verses. And she's like, no, I sat down and I read the whole thing. And which I was like, that's what's given you this glow? Like, it's not drinking a gallon of water a day. Like, I just need to sit down and read the Bible. Interesting. But she then later went on to write a song that was her first #1 called Prayed for You. And it just ended up being this wonderful full circle moment. And it was then the #1 party that I got to give a speech for. And like her husband, just, it's such an incredible to see it come full circle that we were just sitting in this room. She was this just, and she's a little person too. So it's really neat to see that a song move people that comes from something so small. That never gets,
Yes.
that part just brings me to tears. I love it.
Yeah, like the source of that story and all these stories that are then, you sort of, when you go to these events and you hear the story behind the song, I never get enough of it, ever. Like, I'm always like, tell me more. Tell me more, because you don't know the background. If you listen to the lyrics over and over, you might get a piece of it. But then when you hear them tell the actual, inflection point where it was like, I got to sit down and write about this. And then you get to hear it over and over. It just doesn't get old.
If you take someone who's never been, especially in Nashville, like someone to a songwriter around, I remember taking my father-in-law for the first time and we were leaving and he was crying. And I was like, James, like, you okay? And he goes, those songs, they wrote them. Yes, they did. And if you know my father-in-law or my husband, like they're criers. So it's like, wasn't super surprising, but just the way, like, songs are really powerful.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I had my situation was a combination of Lydia's and Celeste's with Angela Hunt's Empire State of Mind. And, it came out in like 2009, but I had just moved to the New York office and in 2008, and I had some similar situations in Nashville as well. But this one in particular, because it just became this anthem, and to hear its origins from her and how she was living in London at the time and was so homesick. I'd just become really homesick for New York City. And with her co-writer, which was another female, another woman, they were just, and it happened like those songs that happen, they just come out of you and they happen in like an hour or two. It's not this thing you're laboring over for forever. It's something that just almost writes itself. And she just talked about that, and they were sitting at the piano and how they were homesick and they wrote it, and in a matter of a couple of hours, not very long, and took it to their publisher, who at the time I think was John Platt at EMI, and Big John Platt, the legend, and he got Jay-Z involved, and then it just took on a life of its own. But to know and have her sing the original, like when she wrote it, and to hear it to, a piano, it's just this whole other thing. And to hear that version and to feel it and to know where it came from, it was just all the feels, that type of thing.
That's awesome.
I had one with one of yours, Erin, with Frozen. Frozen 2.
Yeah, Chris.
With my kid.
I was gonna say, who doesn't?
Like, just the music, and like when she's going to save Arendelle and she's on the water horse and she's like going and she stops. That music that he composed. I was just like, oh my gosh.
I know, the scores that make you cry.
Well, I told Erin about it. I was like, you go tell him that this.
He was really happy to make you cry.
He was happy. He was happy to make her cry. We've all listened to it a lot.
Yeah.
those of us with the littles. I want to leave a little bit of time for questions, but I had one last question before. We've obviously all been home managing our life without music all the time, which I know has been soul crushing. We've had different kinds of music. We've had, lots of communication and conversations, and we've been streaming and playlisting and live, all of it streaming. But when you imagine getting out again, which will happen, God willing, this year, is there like an event or like a concert or just an experience that you feel like would be the most exciting for you at this point, when you just kind of are like, if I could do this, I would be like, I could go back into my little, when you return to sort of your previous life, is there something you miss the most in terms of that experiential thing? What is it that you would most want to do? One thing or an experience, whatever that means for you.
I have a couple things. One is I miss being in the studio with the composers. It's just such a great thing, just hanging out and listening to what they're working on, what's exciting to them. And then there's an event that I'm very grateful to be invited to every year, and that's the Variety Power of Women event. And it's just remarkable. It's hundreds of the top industry leaders in the room at the same time, and it's just so inspirational. And talk about tearjerkers. I mean, just listening to the stories of all these women in their career and what they've had to go through to get to the top, and it's really remarkable.
Mm-hmm. Does anyone else have a vibe?
I've thought way too much about how germs enter my body during all of this. So like, people are like, oh, I can't wait to go to a concert. I'm like, I think I can. Like, I'm actually kind of scared. But the listening room, there are just so many shows and things that I took for granted, going to the Bluebird and just getting to sit at a table and hear a story about how a song came to be, because like, that's at the end of the day, that's all anyone wants, is for someone to listen to them and to hear their story. And there's so many stories that like we just took for granted that I'm like, I can't wait to go hear these.
Mm-hmm.
But like kind of at a distance, because now I'm a germaphobe.
Well, you know how to double mask, wash your hands, stay at a distance.
Yes, I'll be fine.
We're good. All right. Well, I think I'm going to look out at our questions for a moment before we wrap and see if we have anything. We did talk about inspirational women, I think. We talked, that's an interesting question. We talked about mentorship. Here's one that says, what is something you'd like to see more men who think they're allies or want to be allies do to support women and join in the fight for equality and equity for women in the industry? Any thoughts?
I have a thought on that one. That's a great question. And I get asked it quite a bit. And it's easy for me to answer because I am surrounded by men all the time. And I think if someone wants to be an advocate for women, it starts with conversations between men. Say, if you hear someone saying, oh, that bitch, or that, she's, women can't be composers. They're just not good enough. When they hear comments like that coming from their peers, you have to shut it down and say, you know what, I do know some women who are rock stars in the composing industry. And I think I like her because of blah, 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 whatever it is. To stand up for those things in private moments is just as important as standing up for things in the public space.
100% agree. Hold them accountable.
Yeah.
Hold other men accountable, even in the moments where other people don't see them.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like those are even more important.
Yeah, those teaching moments where it's not necessarily shaming, but it's just sort of like, hey,
yeah,
why wouldn't we look at this person for that? Or why can't we, just having an opportunity to be a leader in that regard and take that step. Yeah. Here's another one. Is there an up and coming songwriter that you're working with or composer that you're particularly excited about at this time, or anybody that you feel like has an exciting story at the moment that you want to share? I mean, obviously we respect and love all of our writers and know that everybody is working tirelessly at their career, and we do feel that every day, of course. But is there somebody you're really excited about listening to right now, or that you feel like is just kind of having an exciting time in their career that you want to share for us to listen to or check in on?
Alex Klein being a female producer on a song that is doing so well is super exciting. So I'm just excited to see a hopeful snowball effect of where this then takes her.
And me too, that I mentioned earlier. And we have so many, but these two come to mind right now. I'm really looking forward to see Paloma Mami and Angela Aguilar succeed. I see they have lots of potential. They're both very young. Angela is 16 and Paloma Mami is like 20.
Wow.
We
Yeah.
have a,
Yeah.
we have a composer
ahead, Erin.
over in April who I can't talk about yet, but I'm really excited about her. She already has a very successful career, so but I'm really looking forward to working with her more closely.
Stay tuned, everybody.
Yeah.
More women film and TV composers coming.
Yeah.
We're very excited and proud.
For me, yeah, there's a few, there's more than a few. But Kiran Gandhi, she's, you know, just multifaceted so many ways. She was like a double major in Georgetown in mathematics and like musical theory and like what? And went to Harvard, but it's doing her own thing too now. I would say Laura Lee Bishop, Primo. She's got this alter ego called Primo the Alien that I just can't get over her creativity. It just, please check her out. She's on Spotify. She does just amazing stuff all on her own, producing, writing, doing all of her own things. And she's got this amazing like 80s synth pop thing, which speaks deep into my soul. I love my synth pop and I love my 80s. You know, and Tamara Jade, she was on The Voice. She's been a background singer forever, but she just was on this last season of The Voice, and just her whole vibe, her whole positivity, her swagger. I love her. My girl Melanie Watson. Just I love them all.
Oh, Diana's just gonna keep rolling. We're just like roll. No, I'm
rolling.
kidding.
That's it. That's it. I'm done.
No, it's great, and we'll make a note. So I'm gonna just close with saying thank you to everybody for sharing your stories and your guidance and your counsel and your how you got here. I also want to remind everybody. So again, we're doing these Wise Women Wednesdays. I'm like, cue the children. Hi. And they're 4 sharp. Lydia is going to be our first next Wednesday. She's going to be hosting a conversation called Breaking into Country Music with Allison Feltz-Cruz, who we've discussed, and Alex Klein, who we've discussed. So I hope to see you guys all there. And then we will have Diana do one, and Celeste will also be hosting, and Erin's going to be joining us for some conversations as well. But please tune back in. I think we're going to try to keep it same time, 3 p.m. on Wednesdays. Hopefully that'll continue, but please check our socials and make sure to follow and spread the word for us so we can share these wonderful women with all of you. And thank you guys so much for listening and being a part of it. And did I miss anything?
CSECscores.org.
Oh, right.
And New Music USA.
That's right.
Okay, and it's music education, music in schools month. So as well, just throwing that out there.
My directors, woo.
Thank you guys so much for coming, and we'll see you next Wednesday.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.